Hello and welcome everyone to our very special webinar today on the topic of leveraging data analytics for hotel sales success. As we trail in, please write in the chat where you're logging in from today. We'd love to hear about it. Some housekeeping before we get started. So today's webinar will be a 45-minute session. We will be discussing the topic for about 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to open the floor up to some questions for everyone for the last 15 minutes or so. Now, to dive into some quick introductions. My name is Trevor McLean. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager here at Event Temple. I've been with Event Temple for about 5 years now, and our focus is on offering hotels an easier way for sales teams to sell their groups and event space. And with me, I am so lucky to have today is Jaime Job, CEO of Amaze Insights. Now, Jaime, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It was nice to see some familiar names on the chat. So hi to you guys that I know. I've worked in the hotel industry forever. I've always been on the hotel side of things. So I started out in the 80s at the Lowe's Ventana Canyon Resort in Tucson, and then moved back to Seattle, where I'm from, and worked at the Sheraton for 15 years, and then for Starwood after that. And then ultimately, I worked as a Delphi trainer for Starwood for the last part of that stint. And then after 9/11, my team was disabled, or was disbanded, and so I just started consulting. So I started my consulting business in 2001. It's been almost 22 years, and in that time I have been working with hotels and management companies and ownership groups on all things sales and catering related, and really founded my new company, which is Amaze Insights, a couple of years ago with a partner, Mike Kenny, who's a brilliant product developer side, formerly worked for Newmarket. And we founded Amaze Insights to solve the problem of data analytics for hotels. We're kind of behind the times. So that's what we've done. So this is really right up my alley. I appreciate working that you invited me, Trevor. And we have a lot to cover today. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
We definitely do. And Jaime, I just want to start that off by just asking a little bit about you, right? You mentioned quite a bit of experience in the hospitality field. So I'm so curious, and I love to ask anyone this question. It's such a unique field. What made you join the hospitality field? What made you join the industry?
I think I was at a conference earlier this year where everyone sat around the table. We were at the breakfast tables, rounds of 8. And the question was, where did you start your career? What was your first job? And most of us started doing something like dishwashing, right? So, and my mom worked at a restaurant when I was a kid, and I think I washed dishes in the beginning when I was about 11. So, I always worked in the restaurant business and was sort of raised on the idea of helping and serving others. And that's really what we do in the hospitality field. It's all about serving other people and making experiences better for them. And I've always loved that about the hospitality industry, and I still love it today.
So that's fantastic. Really. And then, why stay?
Yeah. Again, I don't know. Some stay, some go, but I stayed just because I love the industry and I love the people, and I've formed relationships over these years, and it kind of gets in your blood. And it's still difficult to sit down at a restaurant and not think about what I would do if I were the one waiting the table. And that's been a long time since I've waited a table, but it's just sticks with you.
I'm assuming you're the one, when you check into a hotel, you're noticing all the details and pointing it out to your husband and saying,
I try to keep it to myself because I'm not working. But, there is something about being in a hotel that makes me feel like I'm working, just because I've been, I've done so much of that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm then curious as well, what made you decide to consult versus staying working at the Sheraton? That's a beautiful hotel in Seattle. I was actually just there recently, and I'm curious what made you go into going off on your own. That's a very scary venture.
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was 2001, and I was working part-time for Starwood and part-time for the Sheraton, and I loved my job. I was working, if you can believe it, I was working part-time remote even then. And that was a requirement for me in my personal situation. I had a sick kid who was disabled, so I needed to be home. And the Sheraton was gracious enough to let me do that beginning in 1992, if you can imagine, when we were, having connecting to the hotel network required that old fax screeching sound, just to get
Get the
connected.
modem.
But yeah, I loved my job. I loved my team. I thought I was indispensable. I thought, and I know that I was valued, but after 9/11, there was such a hard hit moment in hospitality that the team, the Delphi training piece of that team was disbanded. And I could have stayed on at the Sheraton and done other things or done something I'd already done before. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I knew that we had hotels anticipating training, and now we didn't have any more trainers. So, with the blessing of Starwood, I was able to take my severance and then turn around and go to those hotels anyway, and just under a consulting banner. So it wasn't really a choice I thought I would ever make, but the life does that to you sometimes. So I made the choice, and it was honestly the best career decision I could have made. I just didn't know it at the time, which I think many people can relate to.
Absolutely. And wow. And then you take the leap again in about 2021 and you found
Yeah.
Amaze Insight. And
Yeah.
what led you to the path to found Amaze Insights? How did that come about?
Well, that's a great question. Of all of the years, even we have a great timeline slide, which we'll put up on our website so people can look at it. But it's kind of like looking at where we were with hotel sales and catering systems from the time that Delphi was founded, which was really one of the early ones in the 80s. And we went from paper and typewriters to a system. And it's taken us a very long time to catch up technology wise in the hotel space. And so everywhere I went, I've been creating reports everywhere I went for 30 years or more, I'm starting way back then, some manually, some in Excel, and then with every report writing system that was available to me throughout all those years. And everywhere I went, it was the same need. So it's the same question that comes from most GMs and directors of sales and marketing and above property leadership. And it was always clear to me that it's ridiculous that I have to keep creating the same thing over and over and over again everywhere I go. So the timing was right. Pandemic was an interesting time, and Mike Kenny and I took that opportunity to found Amaze Insights and build out what we found really has been needed for as long as I've been in the industry. So it again feels like another level of solving problems for people. And so, that's what we want to do. We had someone come up to us after a recent presentation, and he said, I heard from my team after your presentation today that this is making our lives better, not our job, but our lives, because we can now have access to information that we didn't before. And that's such a rewarding thing, because that's what we're in it for. So that's
Well, it seems like it's that service is very important to you, right?
Yeah.
It's the culmination sort of everything you've done.
Yeah.
You served not just the guests, but then you served hotels, and now you're serving them further by offering them a product that they're looking for and they need, right? And I think
right.
reporting is becoming such a common thing, and we hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, especially from how you've spoken about yourself in your website and how you present like your value proposition, is a key skill is your eye for operational gaps and process mistakes.
Yeah.
What are common gaps and mistakes you tend to see hotels or hospitality groups make in the industry?
That's a great question. I think the beauty of having the opportunity to consult for so long is it allows me to come in with an outside perspective. I have the background, so I know the industry and I know the operation and know what needs to happen. But being able to come in with an outside perspective allows you to see what is difficult to see when you're in the weeds. So I think generally the biggest thing I would say is we miss the opportunity to step back and look at the operation a little bit further back, and it's sort of that analogy of I can't see the forest for the trees because I'm too busy. And so, taking the time to invest in the right people and the right systems so that they can do the job they're paid to do instead of 27 other things that get in the way of what they're really, really intended to do is an important gap. So, for example, I would say, if we have a really great catering leader, right? This is a great sales and catering leader. They're fantastic at selling catering and making the most beautiful weddings happen, and their guests love them. And we are asking them to provide sales and analytics from a reporting standpoint. That may not be their strong suit, and we really want them to sell and we want them to execute those events perfectly. And we take them away from that because we don't have the right systems that allow them to, or the right supporting cast to help them provide the analytics that are also a critical part of success. So it's just making sure that we allow people to do the job that we really want them to do. And sometimes that's difficult when you're in the weeds.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we can all relate to that feeling of it's that common, we use the common saying, at least at Event Temple, of you can't just work in the business, you got to work on the business as well
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to get stuck in the business every day because it's so important and it feels so important. And if you don't do it, you feel like you're behind, but maybe you're not getting ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and with that, I mean, I'm kind of curious, what do you feel like top hotels and groups do differently to separate from the pack? Is it systems and people? Is there something else? Is there something more on top of that? Or can it really be that simple?
I do think it's systems and people are high on the list. And I think being able to look at things with a bit of a longer lens is really important. And, we saw it a lot during the pandemic. My team and I did multiple webinars on what can I be doing now in this slower downtime to prepare for the comeback that we knew it was coming. It took longer than we had hoped and that we expected, but we knew it was coming. And so those companies that we've worked with that have come out of it ahead were the ones that were really focusing during the downtime on what can I be doing now to prepare. And so I think this longer lens of, again, it's not just this event that's happening on Friday night that I should be stressing about. It's being able to back up and look with a longer lens at what strategically makes the most sense. And so when you have the right people in place that are enabled to do their job and the right systems to support that, so that we're not having people spending many, many hours compiling data or whatever other tasks they may be that are taking them away from their primary job, I think that really makes a key difference.
That makes sense. And do you have any advice for anyone who's maybe like feeling that they're not getting that long lens? Like, how do you have any advice on how to think ahead, how to think with that long lens versus maybe where they are right now?
It's so hard. I've heard before, like a really great thing to do is to take the first 30 minutes of the day and just think, right? Like just to pause and give yourself a break. But I don't know about you, but I don't start my day that way. I start right in, and often time differences mean that calls start very early in the morning. But I think it's great advice to be able to take that time at some point in the day to pause and to look at everything that you have on your plate and prioritize and breathe through it a little bit. I think that we are just so stressed all the time, and that we don't take a moment to step back. So I think it's worth, its weight in gold if you can take even 15 minutes and just step back and look at what's on your plate and think about it from a little bit further back.
That's really good advice. And I think that's such a true statement. And so for anyone out there feeling stressed a lot these days, I don't think you're alone. I think we're all kind of feeling that as well too. We maybe just don't like to admit it too much. One thing that we hear a lot, and you sort of touched on it earlier, which is there's this common sentiment these days that hotels are seeing a major increase in demand due to this revenge travel wave, which I think we can all see, especially probably this summer. There's tons of people traveling and going out there. But at the same time, there are quite a few hotels that are losing market share at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you would say that this is a true phenomenon like that, and they don't
Yeah.
notice because they think, hey, we're busy, we're doing great,
Yeah.
but they're losing market share. Would you say that's true?
I do think it's true, at least in some cases. I think we have different and more competition than we've had in the past. Our rates are really high right now in the hotel business. We're charging very high rates, and the expectation that comes along with that is high. So we have, we've been dealing with competing with sort of the Airbnb and Vrbo type of vacation travel for a while now. And I think, hotels have sort of settled and we've found our place. Not everybody wants to do their own dishes and their own laundry when they're on vacation. And so I think we've found our spot, but the expectation is that the service and that the product is worth the rate that we're charging. And we're really challenged because there's such a labor shortage in the hotel, well, overall, but in the hospitality industry and specifically. So how do we provide that? We get people to come in our doors and then maybe they don't come back because the rate was high, they didn't get what they expected, their room's not as clean as they wanted, whatever. Those they seem like little things, but the tolerance for the travelers is very low for those types of issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then even still, like, I guess if you're, as you were talking with labor, you have people who are working to go to the sales side of it, people who are working certain accounts and customers, and they had that relationship. They end up moving on. The hotel goes, hey, we still got those like customers coming in to do those corporate stays with us and that business. And maybe they left and you had no idea. They went across the street because someone else snatched them up while you were trying to keep up, right?
Yeah.
That long lens, you're trying to keep up and then you missed what was right in front of you.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, with that, do you think there's any reports or important, and maybe not reports, but important data points that you recommend people follow today to grow their market share and stay ahead, stay long looking? How can they be using that data to leverage that success?
I really think understanding what's coming in terms of a lead perspective is critical. It's difficult because leads aren't just phone calls that come to us anymore. We have thousands of lead channels. And so we get many leads, we'll get duplicated, we'll get them multiple times from multiple sources. But if we don't understand the demand that's coming to us, where it's coming and what we're losing or what we're turning away, we cannot make a change or affect our market share. But we have to be looking at what business is coming to us and then what are we doing about it and what's falling on the floor. It's very hard because the volume of leads is really high. People just send them out randomly and you don't even know if it's a qualified lead, and salespeople are busy and they think, I'm not going to put this in until I think it's going to go somewhere. But then we don't have that very, very critical view on who's wants to come to us. And we had in one of our presentations recently, we were showing a lead and funnel analytics report, which we love and we talk about it a lot, but it's just demo data. But this guy, he's pretty high up in a large organization, and he said, if I were looking at that hotel, it's not so much that they have so many leads, but they're turning so many away. And why is that? Is it because they're getting the wrong leads, or is it because their strategy needs adjusting? And it was a great point. I thought it was a great way to look at that. So it's not only why are we losing it, but what decisions are we making to turn business away? And do we need to revisit that? And it's changing rapidly. So we need to be able to be dynamic. That's difficult. But what worked yesterday may not work today. So understanding it kind of in real time is critical.
Yeah, quality is so important, right? It's not just quantity. I mean, I think any sales team would like to work a little bit less that always closes, as opposed to working way too much that they can't keep up with and running around.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to keep a long lens if all you're doing is chasing things that are going nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like that person there was a pretty good leader in the space. They understood the space well. One thing I know you've been very vocal about is the idea of a leadership knowledge gap these days, right? With all of these folks that have left the industry, they were smart people who had seen things, they had understood the business, they during the pandemic, obviously things shut down for a long time and people had to move on. What do you mean by the leadership knowledge gap though?
Yeah.
And how can hotels address it?
Well, as you said, during the pandemic, we lost a lot of people either through, a lot of people just decided to retire and we lost them through attrition that way. Others left the industry because they couldn't wait. It was also very, very painful if you were the last one standing in a hotel because you might have been promoted to director of sales, but you were cleaning rooms on your lunch break and, working a banquet in the evening if we even had them, when general managers were landscaping and cleaning parking lots. And it was very, very hard to stay open and be the last one standing. And there was also some survivor's guilt for all the people that in that role, you're the last one who still has a job. So it was a really difficult time. And so now that we're busy again, a lot of those people didn't come back. So we have new leaders in these positions that don't have the benefit of longevity in the industry. I mean, I heard this at a conference recently, at some hotels, we have a general manager today who was managing a Burger King, last week. So how do you bring them up to speed? Because it's a completely different, it's just a completely different job. And so that's a challenge that we're all facing. And I think that we can help in the sense that if we can guide people to the right information at the right time, that's going to help them jumpstart their training. I think that's really key because they don't have maybe the benefit of mentorship. I had great mentors throughout my career in the hospitality industry that kind of walked me through lots of different terminology and all of the acronyms that we love in our industry and all of that stuff that are these newer leaders, maybe they don't have that. So, by providing some really smart analytics in a dashboard form, you don't need to know how your car is running. Like, you don't know how the mechanics you don't need to know how the mechanics work to be able to drive your car. You just need to look at the dashboard, and all the key information that you need will help you get to where you're going. And that's what we need to do from a data analytics standpoint. Provide the map, provide the information that you need to get the job done. And you don't have to worry about how the engine works in the back.
That's fantastic. So let's say I'm that new leader and the check engine light comes on, right? And I need to know how to get up to speed. I need to know how to read that.
Yeah.
What can they do to get up to speed super fast, run that data? Like, what advice do you give? We probably have some groups here today that have some new leaders and they're wondering, how can I speed them up? How can I get them in that zone where they're going to run a successful team? What data do you recommend those people look at to run a
well, I mean, of
successful?
course, I'm going to say you should contact us at Amaze Insights. We can help you with that.
Of course.
But aside from that, there are other organizations that help. I think HSMAI is an interesting organization for leadership to get new leaders involved and connected with other leaders in the space that can help with that mentorship. There's training opportunities in those types of organizations that really help bring people along. And then, I think working with whatever your sales and catering systems are to make sure you have and understand the analytics that are coming to you from those systems is key.
Is there any key report or anything there? Maybe there's no easy button in the world, right? Is it just good dashboards lead to good reporting, lead to good finding results, right?
I mean, that's true. It's just not so simple, right? Otherwise we wouldn't, it wouldn't have taken us so long to get to it, right? But often your organization or your brand, if you work for a brand, will have supporting information and training available to you. And so I think taking the time to go through whatever training you have available to you and reporting that maybe your brand or parent company provides is really important, for sure. And then investing, obviously, in the training. I can't say that enough because I think we throw people into the fire and we think we're too busy for training and then we never get it right. So taking the time to go through that is critical.
I've always heard the term, it's people don't fail, systems do.
Yeah.
In the right kind of
And
place.
processes, it's, not
Yeah.
just the technical systems, but the processes that we put in place are also where we have gaps.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, we're nearing the end of the portion where I'm just asking you questions, and we'll
Great.
be opening it up from there. But if you were wanting to leave people with one or two key takeaways or insights into this discussion today, what would you recommend to the audience, to all the people here?
I really recommend investing in your team and in your systems. Again, I'm going to go back to kind of what I said at the beginning, which is think about what you are paying your leaders to do and then support them in doing that. And so, so does that mean investing in a new system? Maybe. Does it mean investing in training or additional supporting team members? Maybe. But think about what you really want your leaders to be spending their time on, and then help them do that. I think that's critical. So, again, good data and analytics that comes to you is a great start, but there are other ways of just making sure that you're allowing people to do what you want them to do. Allowing them the time to step back and look at things in a more strategic way. And that may take some support.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm gonna steal from the chat for a little bit here, just steal a little bit more time. So I apologize to everyone, but I'm so curious about this now, which is maybe even the idea of how can great data help you invest in your team? Like how can people turn that sort of information into good systems, good training, good investment? I'm so curious of that. What can people do there?
I mean, let's say when you're looking at your data and you see that, we'll start with leads again. If you see that it's taking a long time for leads to get responded to, or our number one turn down reason is no response from client, which is often the case, we look at the analytics and we can see that, hey, our sales team is overwhelmed and they're not getting to these leads. And why is that? Do we need a lead catcher to help support that process? Or do we need to look at where we're getting leads and make sure that we're investing in the right sources so that we get leads that make most sense to us? If I look at the data and it's a mess, nobody's maintaining the system at all, then that shows me that we're buried in the weeds and we are not looking at the long game. If the data is a mess, we can't get much insight out of it. So I think, again, looking at the leads and the data and performance against goals are really critical pieces to understanding how your team is doing and where they need attention. If you have some sales leaders who are converting 80% of the leads that are coming to them, well, that's probably not accurate, right? Because nobody converts 80% of the business. So it just means I'm not putting them all in. But subsequently, you might have someone who's getting a lot of leads, but they just don't convert. And so does that person need coaching? What do they need to help them get past over the hurdle, or is the market assignment wrong? So we're not giving them a fair shake. So I think really understanding what we're doing strategically, again, would help get us across the finish line.
So would you almost say that one of the biggest benefits of like good reporting, good data, good analytics is really that it helps you ask the questions you should be asking versus asking the wrong ones?
Absolutely. It's going to highlight where the gaps are for you instead of I think, and that was one of the things with the legacy knowledge, that some people just have this gut and instinct and experience about their team and about the industry and what's going on in the market. And it can be very accurate. It's almost psychic, right? Like they just know that, well, weddings here usually book 12 months out and, but inside of 30 days, I'm going to pick up X. They have that experience and they know it, and they're often right, but those folks aren't around anymore, or not all of them. So we need ways to have that same insight that comes from the data, and then some gut and instinct help for sure, but we need some supporting data.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm now going to just open it up to the audience, and we've got a couple of questions here so far, but really anything that you're curious about, this is a wonderful time to ask that question, ask something that you'd like to know from Jaime, or and there's no such thing as a bad question, so please ask away. And I'll start us off with our first audience question, which is, what would you say to a hotel team that is old-fashioned in their approach and skeptical of using data? How can I get them to trust the story that our data is showing?
Wow, that's a good one. I mean, I think I would say that in every other area of our lives, we are looking at data all the time. You know, we're kind of inundated by it. We look at our bank accounts and dashboards there, and we look at, you know, everything that we absorb has data and math behind it. And so to not be leveraging the data in that way really puts us at a disadvantage. And I would also say that your competitors are using data. Your competitors are using it's not a substitute for great service. So if we're talking about an old-fashioned team that really, you know, thinks it's all about the service, it definitely is all about the service. It just allows you to focus on it more. So, you know, I would say that we rely on data everywhere, and not just in the hotel space. And the story, you know, it will line up with your gut and instinct and experience if you let it.
Yeah, that's a great, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's a tool to assist, right? Great
Yep.
service is the key, the backbone, the whole reason hospitality
Absolutely.
exists.
Absolutely. Let's
Service.
just free up time to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Better service, not just
yeah.
service, right?
Yep.
Any tips for helping my sales team to focus on larger ticket events rather than going down rabbit trails all the time? So maybe not larger
Yeah.
tickets as much as maybe quality, right? How
Yeah.
do we focus on quality leads?
Again, I think it's really, because we get such a large volume of leads, it's difficult to do, but we can help prioritize by looking at them, you know, being able to analyze the leads by size of the lead, by how does it fit in with our need period and how flexible can we be, and really filtering them instead of just kind of the order that they come in qualifying them to some extent right out of the gate. I think a lead catcher really can help with that if you have the ability to bring one on, just to help funnel leads to the right people so that it's one less task that
You've referred to a lead catcher a few
yeah.
times. Like, what do you mean by that for those who aren't sure or aren't
Yeah.
aware? Like,
I
what
mean,
is
it's
that?
somebody that, you know, depending on your sales system, you might have leads coming in automatically from Cvent or multiple channels or your website. Different RFPs are coming in from lots of places somewhere by email or however but who manages that? So if I have a lead catcher, it oftentimes can be someone at a coordinator level who knows, you know, how the deployment in the hotel works, and they just assign the leads to the appropriate person. So that initial qualifying step of who gets it, and, you know, any other, you know, you can add some qualifiers to that person's role, but it allows them to distribute the leads across the team instead of them all going to one other sales leader who has to deal with deploying them. So it frees
That
up
makes
time
sense.
again for the leaders to be doing and the sales managers to be doing what you want them to do, which is sell and not sort through the leads.
Makes a lot of
They
sense.
still have to sort through the leads, but you know, yeah.
Would it be common for you to see hotels using data in a way that is actually leading them down the wrong path? That's a good question, right? We're talking about the times it leads you
Yeah.
down the right one, but does it ever take you down the wrong one?
Yeah. Boy, I think that's a great question. I have not seen that, but I do think you have to be keeping the data current. So if I looked at data and I wasn't refreshing it constantly, then I think, yes, it can take me down the wrong path because I'm looking at sort of an old message. This is a bit challenging right now because it's changing all the time and every day is different. Yesterday is not the same as today. And so, but if I'm paying attention to it and keeping it current, I think that data most of the time is going to tell you the truth. You can't argue with the numbers. The interpretation might be a little suspect at times, but subjective is a better word. Subjective.
So sometimes we like a little bit of bias, right?
Yeah,
We like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
here's why it's wrong, because it helps feed the ego.
yeah, yeah.
I've got this next question. You were speaking about groups where we can get peer learning. I
Yes.
work in events. Do you have any that you recommend?
Boy, that's a great question. I think I would start with HSMAI and just that's Hospitality Sales and Marketing something association, I think. So,
Yeah, that's
so
a
I would
great one.
start there because they have usually local groups, and I think that would be a great place to start. And there should be one in each region or city that can, and I think that would be a really good starting place to see what's available. I know they have different tracks of learning for conference services, and so I imagine they have catering as well. But it's been a little while since I was heavily involved there.
Yeah, makes sense. And part two to this person's question is any input on regarding what AI can bring to the table?
Yeah, now there's one where we could potentially go down the wrong path, maybe, because AI is really interesting, but it is thank you, Trevor, for putting that in there. It's interesting, but it's early. So, I think maybe everybody's played around a little bit with different versions of AI or Chat GPT, and you ask a question and on the face of it, it looks really interesting. But then when you dig in, it might not be exactly correct. So, I think that we have to be a little bit careful with AI at this stage. It's interesting, though. I feel that we've been doing some machine learning for a really long time. And so now it's kind of opened up in a new way, but the technology, has been around a while, this predictive technology. So we just need to be careful with the way that we use it. And always kind of listen to it, but think about it. Right. Think about it as well. I think it's gonna change the way we do a lot of things ultimately, but it's not going to replace at this stage. It doesn't replace the thought that we need to. I think we'll use it to predict which market segments are performing a certain way, or I think we'll use it for forecasting and predicting data in the future. I think that's a good starting place. But by itself, we still need to manage it.
AI, right? It's definitely the hot topic. It's hard to say, right, where it's
Yeah.
going to go. I think
Yeah.
we none of us can deny it's going to be a part of our future and a key
Yep.
part of it. Who knows where that road goes? So I guess
Yeah.
time will
Yeah.
tell. Our next question. Oh, it's for me. So it's Trevor, what are your favorite event tempo reports for tracking sales team activities and bookings? So I'm going to answer this really from the perspective of a lot of what our conversation has been about. And I'm gonna be a little challenging here, not go fully out of the box, but what I really believe is doing a couple little customizations to your reporting. So the first one, I'm going to start about bookings and leads and lead quality, because that's the essential. And at Event Tempo, a big thing we believe is very in line with what Jamie's saying is every lead has to go in the system. You cannot have just the ones that you're working, just the ones that you think you've got a good chance of closing. I know it's a common sentiment in the industry to just want to put in the business that you think you can close so you can have that nice 80% number, but they all have to go in. And then from there, what you can start doing is you can segment your bookings report by things like lead type, leads by lost, leads by won, leads by tentative. You start pulling these all together and you start looking for trends. I know, at least with our team, at times when we've had, and I know I'm not in the hospitality industry, but I can answer sales is sales and they all kind of work similar. We start noticing trends. Hey, this lead source that maybe we're paying a lot of money for, it brings a lot of noise and it brings no business, right? And that's what you want to really know, because that's how you then stop that noise too of too much bad business that you maybe can't handle, a bunch of people that make a lot of requests with you, but they never answer your emails when you get back. That's work, right? That's time, that's effort. People get emotionally invested because they feel like they're losing. You really want to be able to check that and track that. So I do recommend customizing some booking reports there. And then when it comes to activity tracking, activity is super important. And I highly recommend setting some base activity quotas. So you want to say, hey, you got to do at least 100 tasks a day. It sounds silly, But then in a one-on-one, what you can do is you can customize a task report so that not only can you see was the task done, but what was done on the task. Hey, I talked to this person. This is what we talked about. Because that's mixing that idea of quantity with quality. Maybe you're doing lots of things, but you're not doing it well. You'll want to know that, right? What are you doing on the call? Are you going to the right thing? Are you asking the right questions? That's where you're going to make that mix together to give yourself the right answers. And those are things that you can do with Event Temple. We're getting quicker, but I'm going to keep us going here. We're almost near the end, but when I think of data, all I can imagine is Microsoft Excel. Is there a more modern visual way of showing data to my team?
Well, yes, there's lots of, yes. I mean, we have been working, I mean, we leverage at Amaze Insights, we leverage Tableau and in some cases Power BI, but there are lots of newer solutions. Those are the primary ones that provide great visualization to the data so that we don't have to be looking at column Z and row 470 to know what number, I've been looking at these things a long time, so I know exactly which cell I want to look at myself, but that's a hard thing to train. So these tools that help us leverage the data and present it back in a friendlier way really make a lot of sense. I think
I've heard of this one, Amazing Company.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure if
Yep.
that's a good one, but I'd probably check it out. I heard their CEO is great. Um, the next question I got here, and I believe this may be our last one. We'll go a little over, but we'll answer it either way. Software in the hospitality business can be difficult to draw data from. How much time do you typically spend transforming data, and how much time do you spend building dashboards?
Well, at Amaze Insights, we have a platform that connects to various sales and catering systems, including Event Temple, and brings the data into our environment. We transform the data in the back. That magic has happened already. So the presentation of the dashboards, we don't have to recreate it all the time. I mean, we will customize as needed, but overall the solution exists today. And so, I think the smartest thing is to leverage a great system that's already been built rather than try to reinvent it, because I'll tell you, it's taken a long time. The need is out there for sure. So that there's not a lot of time on our side to make that magic happen.
I love that. I can't think of a better closing statement there. What the value is of a product like Amaze Insights. Well, with that, we've just passed time, and I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today, and taking the time to listen to us have this chat. Especially for the great participation. Thank you so much. And with that, I just want to leave Jaime, any closing words before we go, anything to close off?
Well, just thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. And thank you guys for attending. Please reach out if you have any questions, and, happy data hunting. Thank you.
Everyone, happy analytic hunting. And yes, we will be sharing the recording. So I will be sending that over. That'll be coming by tomorrow. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.